Hi, I'm Kelsey with Construction Business TV, reporting from Salt Lake City. Today I'm here with Juan Moreno, a real estate investor and agent with Wise Choice Real Estate. Hi Juan, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So, why did you choose real estate and how did you get into the business?
So I started real estate probably because a lot of my family was doing it at the time. I have a lot of uncles and aunts who are either doing mortgages or they're in real estate themselves. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do with school. And I wasn't too sure on the current job that I had at the time. This was back when I was probably 20. I'm 26 now. So I eventually just I talked to some realtors here and there, and I talked to one that he was kind of a big time agent, had a lot of listings, a lot of business that he was doing. He needed an assistant, and I was like, "Hey man, how would you like it if I came work for you? I'm okay if you pay me what I was making before, as long as I can learn the business and see what it's all about." And he brought me on, and I've been doing it ever since.
Nice. Can you tell me a little bit about your position as an investor and as a real estate agent and your responsibilities?
So it's kind of progressed because when I first started, it was more of like an assistant capacity when I was doing work for him. I wasn't licensed at the time, but then once I did get my license, my main focus in real estate is mostly with the Latino community. So I'm bilingual. I speak Spanish, and so that helps a lot when I'm trying to get new clients. Because I can work with an English speaking client all day long. That's what most people can do in this business, but being able to speak the language, like the Spanish language, and you're basically capturing an entire side of the business that a lot of people don't get to capture. So that's mainly what I focus on. Um, we also do a lot of we do a lot of like these investment loans where if somebody doesn't have good enough credit or there's something that's holding them back from being able to qualify, which is it's a big thing for the Latino community because a lot of them are coming from other countries. They're not as well established, but they might have money and they might have the desire to invest into real estate and buy themselves a property. And so we basically help them do that without having to go through a bank. So that's also another avenue of the business that we take care of a lot and that I mostly take care of on my team. So hope that kind of answers your question a little bit.
Can you explain more how those types of loans work and I guess kind of where they're borrowing from if they're not borrowing from a bank?
Yeah, so my team specifically, we specialize in what's called seller financing. So when you have I'm sure with regular real estate transactions, they're pretty cut and dry. It's usually go get a loan, find a house, close in 30 days. That's usually most people, and to qualify, you need to have good credit, you need to have income, you need to have work history, depending on if you're W-2 or 1099. So that's all good. That's basically the cookie cutter part of real estate. But there's a whole other avenue of real estate called seller financing, which is a lot of people have heard about it, but our team specializes in it. So we do it for investors, we do it for buyers, we do it for sellers. And basically, with a seller financing, to make it simple, because it's kind of hard to explain, it's really intricate. But to make it kind of simple, it's the seller essentially letting you live in their home. So they sell the house to you, but you don't get put on title. And it's kind of a weird concept for a lot of people. So the way to simplify that is it's kind of like getting a car loan. So when you go to the bank to qualify for a car loan, once you buy the car is yours. You can do whatever you want with it. You can sell it, put new tires and rims on it. You can paint it if you really want to. So that's, when you go buy a car, the car is yours, but title remains at the bank until you pay off that loan. So that's how our financing works, the way that we do it. And it's really safe for the buyer. It's really safe for the seller because we're not, the buyer's bringing in a good amount of money down, and they're also protected contractually with the seller so that there's nothing that can go wrong. Like back in the 08 when you're seeing all the everybody getting foreclosed on and stuff, one of the big things that would happen is the seller would say, okay, I'm going to rent you my house. But at the same time, they were secretly not actually using that monthly payment to pay the underlying mortgage. And that's, why you had foreclosures everywhere and people getting kicked out of homes. So there's a lot of protections in seller financing that keep it from being that way. Anyways, that's kind of like our specialty on our team. That's what I focus on a lot. So yeah, it gets really a lot more complicated the more you get into it. But for people that are watching this that don't know much about real estate, they can kind of get an idea. It's kind of like a car loan. So yeah.
That's a freaking awesome opportunity. As far as the seller financing goes, are there any, I guess, basic limits that a buyer might want to know about before they
Sure.
approach you?
So the number one factor for a seller financing transaction, especially if I'm representing a seller that's going to sell their house on a seller financing contract, I will always advise them to at least get 10% down. So when you go to a mortgage company, if you have really, really great credit, you might be able to qualify for like a zero money down loan or a 3.5% FHA loan, depending on your credit and your situation. With seller financing, we want to be a lot more strict about what's going to get you in the door, because we don't have credit backing you up. We don't have income backing you up. We actually don't check any of those things. We want you to come in with cash. So if you come in, let's say you're buying a house for $300,000 and we're asking you to put a minimum of 10% down, you have to come in with 30K. So if you're putting that much money down, that usually means that you're going to be somebody that's going to make the payment on time, because you're putting a lot of money into the property. So it makes it pretty safe for both sides, because the seller still gets some money out of the transaction and they get a monthly payment as if they were renting the property. But the buyer gets the added protection of knowing this is my house. So if I want to, I could sell it. And if it goes up in value, whatever difference there is mine to keep. So it's a win-win for both sides, as long as everything is understood in the contract. But to answer your question, yeah, you do need at least 30%, or not 30%, 10% down to qualify, depending on the investor or the seller. Some of them will want more, 15, 20%. It really just depends, but 10% minimum to be safe.
So it sounds like seller financing could be a good option for that nervous buyer that doesn't have good credit. But what other advice would you have for that first-time home buyer, worried about credit and unsure about a down payment?
So if you're a buyer that's looking to, you're looking to buy your first house and you've already gone the route of trying to get qualified, and let's say you've been turned away because you don't have good credit, or maybe you're self-employed and you need another year of taxes in order to be able to qualify. There's lots of different things that will keep you from qualifying. So if you're needing something short-term, then like a short-term seller financing might be a good idea for you, as long as you have the money to do it. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody that doesn't have the down payment to do it, because first of all, you're not going to be able to. And second of all, you're probably not going to have as good of a position. If somebody were to say yes to something less than 10%, more than likely they're going to be making that up somewhere else. So if you're somebody that really wants to get into a home, you want to start building equity, it can be a really great option, as long as you have the money down and as long as you understand, what kind of interest rate you're going to be paying, what your monthly payment's going to look like, how long is your contract for, because seller financing contracts aren't forever. They're usually limited to about 2 to 3 years in most cases, sometimes longer, depending on the client. And that's where the amount of money down that you put is going to kind of dictate those other factors. So it's kind of on a case-by-case basis, but if you're considering it, definitely have the money down and definitely make sure that you have an agent that's properly, explaining the contract to you, so you're not getting confused on what the terms mean.
Yeah, explaining the contract is a huge deal. What advice do you have? Actually, let's go back. So the market is pretty gnarly right now, of course, and buyers are kind of on pins and needles to get into a house. What are you doing to make sure that your buyer wins?
So yes, the market is extremely frustrating. It's funny because I get people asking me all the time, well, the market's so good, you must be doing so well. And I mean, that maybe would have been true if I had the amount of buyers that I do now, but I was working them, let's say 2-3 years ago, then maybe that would be true. I'd be doing a lot of volume. But the problem is right now, there's too many buyers for the amount of houses that are for sale. And so it's extremely hard to get buyers under contract. With that being said, there are certain things you can do. If you're an agent listening to this, I'm sure you know, but there's, for example, there's an escalation clause that you can put into your offer when you're offering on a home. An escalation clause basically lets you say, okay, we will pay above highest and best offer to a certain dollar amount. That can sometimes win you the deal. Of course, you have to be careful with those because you do have an appraisal that has to go through. Other things like putting more earnest money. If you put more money into the transaction, then the sellers are going to look at it and be like, okay, this person's putting more skin in the game. They're more interested. If something falls through, they're willing to part with, let's say $5,000 earnest money, which isn't typical. Normally you see $1,000, $2,000, but if you're going higher on your earnest money, that basically says, I have more skin in the game. Also, dates are important, because it's one thing to say I'm going to do $10,000 in earnest money, but if you have your financing and appraisal deadline all the way out to the 28th, and let's say you have a month to close a deal and you started on the 1st, then you're not really putting skin in the game because you're basically safe for 28 days. Those $10,000 are safe for 28 days. You can cancel for any reason. So sometimes what's good to do is say, okay, I will have half of my earnest money. So let's say 5,000 of that 10 is going to go hard after the due diligence deadline. And due diligence is usually about 10 days, 15 days, depending on how you wrote your contract. So that money is going to be non-refundable a lot earlier on in the transaction, and that's going to make your offer look a lot stronger. So that's something else you can also do. Other things like, if you have the option to choose between an FHA loan and a conventional loan, conventional is going to look a lot better on paper than an FHA because FHA has more specific requirements for their appraisals. So if you can go conventional, it's always better. If you're putting more money down, so let's say instead of getting a zero money down loan, you're going out and getting a 10%, 20%, 25% down loan, that also looks a lot better. It's not realistic for most people, but it does look a lot better on paper if you have the ability to do so. And basically just having a good agent that will reach out to the listing agent, will talk to them, try to build some kind of a rapport relationship. Because sometimes the difference between one offer and the other is just what kind of chemistry and what kind of personality the buyer's agent has and what kind of personality the listing agent has. And if they can vibe well, that might make the difference between getting a deal or not. So if you have a good agent that's willing to talk you up, willing to call, is willing to just be there 24/7 to answer questions, because a listing agent will have a lot of questions too. You might send an offer, the listing agent calls you. If you're not answering your phone, if you're not having a relationship with that listing agent, it's very unlikely that you're going to get your offer to go through, because they're going to see that and they're going to be like, oh, well, I have 2 identical offers here, but this listing agent is getting back to me, this one's not. So, yeah.
Awesome. And then how has COVID-19 affected the real estate industry?
So not as much as I originally thought it would. I think back in March when it popped off, most people were getting pretty nervous. We actually had a pretty big, as far as sales for homes, we had a pretty big dip during that month. But then when people started to realize that, COVID's a big deal, but we can still manage it, that's when people were like, okay, we're going to start buying again. And then, of course, you saw the Fed lower interest rates. So that made things a lot more competitive all of a sudden as well. I mean, interest rates are pretty much the lowest they've ever been. So that's making a lot of buyers want to keep buying. So my business did get affected a little bit from COVID, but I would say got more affected from interest rates dropping, because then everybody was wanting to buy, and that made the market way more competitive. It was already super competitive even just a year ago. So basically, you're adding insult to injury with the lower interest rates, so people are really wanting to buy. It's really great for new buyers, but it does make our jobs harder as real estate agents, because we can't really get you closing costs. We can't really negotiate prices. We can't really do a lot of things that you might be able to do in the buyer's market when you're in such a hot seller's market like right now. So it makes our jobs easier. It makes it harder for buyers to get an offer to go through. There might be a lot of buyers that want to buy, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's going to get a home sold. It's hard. So I would say that's mainly how COVID has affected it. It's kind of a byproduct of COVID.
Are you still able to show homes?
Showing homes, yeah, it's basically the same. I wouldn't say that's changed at all, to be honest with you. I don't know if that's good or bad, but yeah, I haven't really had to go out of my way for anything. I mean, yeah, you wear masks and you try to sanitize when you're done, but other than that, people are still having open houses and going out and stuff. So hasn't changed a ton, to be honest with you.
Is there anything else you want to add?
Unless you have any more questions, I don't really have anything else.
Okay, if someone listening wants to get a hold of you, how should they do so?
They can do so. I like to just be called. That's the best way to reach me. Just give me a call. Do you want me to plug my number here?
Yeah.
Okay. So my number is 801-513-8344. I'm with Wise Choice Real Estate. You can also find me on Facebook. I have a realtor page. It's just pretty sure it's like Juan Jose Moreno Real Estate. You can look it up and it should pop up pretty quick. You can also look me up on Facebook on my team. We have a Zeller Real Estate team. That's with a Z, Zeller. You can see our listings on there. We always post stuff. So yeah, get a hold of me if you're trying to buy a house or trying to sell.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Construction Business TV. Today I've been speaking with real estate agent and investor Juan Moreno with Wise Choice Real Estate. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this video. I'm Kelsey reporting from Salt Lake City for Construction Business TV.